Large red arrow shows the coil pack, a coil for each cylinder. The small yellow arrow shows the plugs, and the small red arrow shows the steering shaft that goes inside to the steering wheel. I'll be doing a repair on this steering shaft assembly because it was making a noise, and the cure for it is to keep it greased, and in order to do that we'll have to drill that shaft, remove it and drill it and put a grease fitting in it so it won't have to be taken out every time. This photo shows where the steering shaft has been removed. The large yellow arrow shows the splined shaft that goes up to the steering wheel. The red arrow shows a hole in the dash that will be covered by a boot once this shaft is put back in place. The local dealer has stated that greasing this shaft will cure the noise that it makes. And so we're going to put a grease fitting in it where you don't have to take this shaft out every 15 or 20,000 miles and grease it. We'll just be able to grease it in the truck. This isn't a safety issue, it's just a noise issue. Here's an updated insert. There may be a new shaft available for this from the dealer. I think eventually they're going to have a recall on this, so you might want to check with the dealer before you go to all this trouble. Okay, we talked about this steering shaft issue. Now here's the shaft that'll have to be modified. I've drilled it, put a grease fitting in it where the yellow arrow is. Where the large arrow is, I've blocked it off with an epoxy compound called JB Weld. Before you epoxy that, there's a small U-shaped clip that goes in there to support the bolt hole. You need to remove that clip and turn it around. You'll see what I mean when you get it out. And you need to clean and sand these parts so that the epoxy will adhere. I want to insert a disclaimer in this. Do this modification at your own risk. Now, I use this truck every day. My kids drive this truck, and I have no fear about doing this modification, but use your own judgment. Make sure that this bolt hole is clear before you epoxy. And also, don't forget to put your boot back on this shaft before you put the shaft back in the vehicle. I did. That will enable the grease. This shaft was hollow, and without this blockage the grease would just go down into the other tube. But this blockage will enable that grease to be forced back up through the splines. The small red arrow shows the bolt that holds the two shafts together. Here are the two steering shafts. The upper one is collapsible in case of a wreck, and the large arrow shows the convoluted part of the tube that can collapse in an accident. The small red arrow to the left shows where the universal joint on this shaft bolts on to the steering box. The small yellow arrows show where the shaft shown in the lower part of the photo slides inside the other shaft and bolts at the two yellow arrows. The black portion of the lower shaft is splined inside and slides over the shaft that I have shown you previously that goes up to the steering wheel. And then the large black shaft at the top goes from that shaft down to the steering box. It's in the splined area of this shaft. It's where the noise supposedly originates, and supposedly greasing will eliminate. Doing this modification did fix this truck, did remove the noise, but I also want to add that you really need to leave your boot loose while you grease this so you can see the grease come out the end of the shaft and maybe wipe the surplus away before you put the boot back on.